You're holding it right now, that cold, smooth screen in your hand, the one that lights up your face every morning and keeps the whole world inside a rectangle of glass. Strip it all the way down, and it's just sand. Ordinary beach sand somebody got hot enough to melt, then let cool into something clear enough to see through. Now jump. 700,000 years. East Africa. A Homo erectus cracks open a black rock near a volcano. The edge that splits off is sharper than any knife you've ever owned. Cuts skin before you even feel it. That's volcanic glass. Obsidian. Glass was already here, billions of years before we showed up. Lightning fused it. Meteorites melted whole deserts into it. Volcanoes poured rivers of it. We just picked the stuff up and used it without ever understanding what it was. So how do you get from a chunk of cooled lava to the screen you're staring at right this second? Here's the thing most people never get told. Glass wasn't one clean invention. It was a long chain of pure accidents mixed with the kind of stubborn curiosity that refuses to look away. We're talking 4,500 years, more than a dozen civilizations, and at least 3 separate moments where somebody was trying to make something else entirely and ended up with glass instead. There's a physics problem buried in the middle of this story that scientists are still fighting about today. And along the way, you're going to see Romans creating nanotechnology 1,600 years before anyone had a name for it. A whole island turned into a prison just to keep glass secrets from leaking. And the quiet fact that almost every bit of data crossing the ocean right now is riding on threads of glass thinner than a human hair. None of that was supposed to happen, but it did. And the path from that first accident to the screen in your hand is stranger than most people are ready for. It didn't start with some genius deciding to invent glass. Most likely, it started in a hot workshop where people were making something else entirely. In Mesopotamia and Egypt, they were crafting faience, little quartz beads and charms coated with a shiny glaze. Get the kiln a little too hot, mix the right alkali in, and suddenly a thin layer of real glass forms on the surface. Somebody notices, scrapes it off, realizes it can stand on its own. There's another version floating around. Copper smelters, watching the waste slag cool into something glassy and clear. Either way, nobody was aiming for glass. They were just paying attention when the accident happened. And here's the part that still feels wild. Chemical tests using laser ablation show Egyptian glass and Mesopotamian glass have completely different fingerprints. 2 civilizations, same raw materials, same high-heat kilns, figured it out separately. No phone call, no trade secret passed along. Just the same lucky mistake happening in 2 places at once. For the first 1,000 years, that stuff was pure luxury, ranked right up there with lapis lazuli and gold. We've got letters from the Amarna archive where one king basically writes to the pharaoh and says, "The glass you sent me was garbage." That's how rare and valuable it was. Heads of state arguing over the quality of the gift like it was diamonds. For 1,500 years, every single glass vessel on Earth was made the hard way. They called it core forming. You shape a core of clay and dung around a metal rod, dip it in molten glass, or wind hot trails around it, smooth it on a stone, then scrape the core out after it cools. Hours of skilled work for one small bottle. That's why glass stayed locked in the hands of kings and priests. Then, around 50 BC, somewhere on the coast of what is now Lebanon or Syria, somebody had a different idea. They stuck a blob of molten glass on the end of a hollow iron pipe and blew. Suddenly, one trained worker could make a vessel in minutes instead of hours, dozens in a day, thinner, lighter, actually transparent for the first time. A Sidonian craftsman named Ennion started signing his pieces in Greek. Ennion made this. His cups and bottles show up all over the Mediterranean. One of the first real brand names in manufacturing history, stamped on glass 2,000 years ago. The Romans took that trick and scaled it the way they scaled everything. Within decades, workshops from Cologne to Alexandria were pumping out cups, bottles, bowls. The writer Strabo notes you could buy a drinking glass for a single copper coin. From gemstone to everyday object almost overnight. And then they did something no one had thought of before. They put glass in walls. At Pompeii, buried under ash in 79 AD, you can still see the thick, cloudy window panes. The radical idea that you could look through a wall and keep the weather out at the same time. The Romans didn't stop at cheap cups. They made a cage cup in the 4th century that still sits in the British Museum. Light it from the front and it looks jade green. Light it from behind and it turns deep ruby red. For centuries, nobody could explain it. Then, in 1990, scientists put it under a microscope and found particles of gold and silver only 50 to 100 nanometers across. Surface plasmon resonance. The same physics we're still chasing for medical sensors today. The Romans were doing nanotechnology 1,600 years before the word existed. After Rome fell, the real secrets moved to Venice. In 1291, the Republic ordered every glass furnace relocated to the island of Murano. Official reason? Fire safety. Real reason? Control. Glassmakers got fancy privileges. They could carry swords, their daughters could marry nobility, but they were forbidden from leaving. If one of them ran, the state first tried to bring him back. If that failed, the family paid the price. Around 1450, a Murano man named Angelo Barovier figured out how to make glass almost completely colorless. He called it cristallo. Looked like pure rock crystal. Venice held that monopoly for 2 centuries. France got tired of waiting. In 1665, they lured several Murano workers to Paris. Some of those men later died under circumstances that looked a lot like poisoning. But the damage was done. Between 1678 and 1684, the French installed 357 mirrors in the Hall of Mirrors at Versailles. A giant political flex in glass. We don't need Venice anymore. While Venice was locking its secrets down, glass was quietly doing something far bigger on the other side of Europe. Eyeglasses showed up in northern Italy around 1286. A historian later calculated they gave aging scholars 15 to 20 extra years of clear reading. Before that, once your eyes went, the books were gone. Glass handed them back. In 1608, a spectacle maker in the Netherlands put 2 lenses in a tube. The next year, Galileo pointed a better version at Jupiter and saw 4 tiny moons moving around it. 2 pieces of curved glass, and the entire idea that everything revolved around Earth started to crack. At the opposite end of the scale, a Dutch cloth merchant named Antony van Leeuwenhoek ground lenses so tiny and perfect, he became the first human to see bacteria. He called them animalcules, little animals swimming in a drop of water. Then, in 1903, a French chemist named Edouard Benedictus knocked a glass flask off a shelf. It cracked but didn't shatter. A thin film of cellulose nitrate had held the pieces together. That accident became laminated safety glass. Every car windshield on the road today is a descendant of that clumsy moment. In 1966, Charles Cow figured out that pure enough glass fibers could carry light for miles. Today, more than 95% of all international internet data travels through threads of glass thinner than a human hair, lying on the ocean floor. The internet is glass. And the screen in your pocket? That chemically strengthened stuff called Gorilla Glass sat in a Corning filing cabinet for 45 years. Steve Jobs almost walked away from it. They talked him into giving it a shot. Now it's in over 8 billion devices. There's one piece of glass that ties the whole story back to something older than any of us. In 1922, Howard Carter opened Tutankhamun's tomb and found a carved scarab set into a ceremonial breastplate. For decades, people thought it was ordinary chalcedony. Then, in 1998, a mineralogist ran the tests. It was Libyan desert glass. Pale yellow-green, almost pure silica, scattered across the Great Sand Sea. Formed 29 million years ago when a meteorite or a massive airburst slammed into the desert and melted the sand at temperatures over 1700 degrees. Egyptian craftsmen found a chunk of that ancient glass, recognized it was beautiful, carved it into a sacred beetle, and laid it on the chest of a dead teenage king. They had no idea they were working with the leftover scar of a cosmic event that happened millions of years before the first human ever walked the Earth. They just thought it was pretty. So we come back to the same question we started with. How do you get from a black volcanic rock to the screen in your hand? Glass is only sand. That's all it has ever been. Heated sand that somebody, somewhere, decided not to scrape off and throw away. They looked closer instead. Glass is sand. That's all it has ever been. Ordinary sand heated until it forgot how to be solid the normal way, then shaped by human hands. From that sand, we made lenses that cracked open the sky and showed us moons around other worlds. We made lenses that looked the other direction and found entire kingdoms living in a drop of water. We stretched it into threads thinner than hair and laid them across the ocean floor so that almost every word, every picture, every idea we share can travel at the speed of light. We backed it with silver so a person could finally see their own face clearly. All of it from sand. And the only reason any of it exists is that someone, thousands of years ago, noticed something strange happening in a hot kiln. And instead of scraping it away, they looked closer. Someone looked closer. Look around you right now. What piece of glass suddenly feels a little strange? The screen in your hand. The window across the room. The mirror you walked past this morning. Drop a comment and tell me the one that hit you. The moment you went, wait, that's just sand? If this story made you look at something ordinary a different way, stick around. Next time, we're going after another material that started as a pure accident and ended up changing everything. You won't want to miss that one. Remember, none of this exists because somebody had a perfect plan. It exists because somebody looked closer. So let's keep doing that together.